Greetings, gamers. Dr. Diabolic here. Thank you for joining me. Today we're talking about bandwidth. We're talking about the future of console gaming, not just Xbox. Last week, there was a huge freakout, as usual, right on schedule, that the Xbox was going to disappear. That all consoles would eventually disappear. Because everything is going to the cloud. It's the future! I'm sure you've heard that. And it's also presented whether you like it or not. This is what's happening. So there's a few things to think about. Microsoft is definitely thinking along these lines. That there might come a day where the Xbox itself disappears into the cloud. And if they can do that, there's some actual benefits to that. It might actually be cheaper. You might actually be, let's say you could have perfect streaming. Then you could play it anywhere, all right? So as long as you had that perfect streaming, you could stream it to your touchpad, your phone, your big screen TV at your friend's house. Wouldn't that be cool? So there are some advantages, and the gaming industry, seems like they are really interested in this, particularly on the console side, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to take a step back here and take a look at some of the possibilities. Here's Moore's Law. Most of you are probably familiar with Moore's Law. Basically, it says that the number of transistors, so think power, okay, this is how powerful your CPU is, over time increases at a rate of about 60%. Okay? So what that means is, as time goes on, computers get more and more powerful. Everyone understands this. That's why you should wait to buy a PC. If you have some time before you need a PC, you should definitely wait for the last minute, because in the future, you'll get more power for the money you spend. And researching this, and because some people are so sure that we're going to go into the cloud, there's a lot of different variables at play, and there's no reason to be absolutely sure. Although it might not matter in the end, and we'll get into that. So the next thing you should look at is Nielsens Law. And Nielsens Law is just like Moore's Law, and it says that the number of the measure of the access, okay, so your bandwidth, okay, whatever units of measure you're going to use, like megabits per second or something like that, we're just going to call it access. Over time, it also increases, and it has been increasing since 1983. That's when most of the measurements start. Moore's Law has been acting for a lot longer than that. It starts at the turn of the century, last century. And if you look at Nielsen's Law, it actually increases at 50%. Okay, so if you remember back to your math class, a 50% increase is your perfect diagonal slope. So imagine these two graphs side by side now, or even overlapped, because they're both dealing with time. You can see that Moore's Law should outpace Nielsen's Law. So your processing will increase faster than your bandwidth. And that's all things being equal. Now, the thing you have to remember is that these aren't like laws of nature. There's things that could step in, that could change things. A couple years ago, people thought that Moore's Law was coming to an end. And you can see a lot of that on the internet. But it didn't end. And in fact, the future looks bright. People are looking ahead towards quantum computing. Microsoft already has programming languages for quantum computing. So that's pretty interesting, and we'll see if it actually pans out. It might be like nuclear fusion. It's always 10 years away, but quantum computing could really change everything. But even a step below that, a couple years ago, you remember when H&P or HP, they came out with this super fast PC that was coming out in the future. And I haven't heard much about that recently, but you know, there's no end in sight. Moore's Law might just keep accelerating. And there's a lot of technology that follows this pattern of doubling every so often. With Moore's Law, it's 18 months. With Nielsens Law, it's every 2 years, and actually 2.5 years. But with wireless, I'll throw up this other graph. This is Cooper's Law, and Cooper's Law is just wireless access speeds. And that's pretty interesting, because one of the things that holds back Nielsen's Law, the wired bandwidth rates, is the infrastructure. When these companies put all this, telephone poles and satellites and fiber in the ground and everything else, that costs a hell of a lot of money up front. They have to pay for it all up front. So even after they put it in the ground and start selling it, if something better comes out, they're not going to go and dig all that up right away. They're going to wait for it to pay for itself and give them back some profit, ideally. So that's kind of the thing that holds back the Nielsen's Law. It keeps it at 50%. So if you take that away, it's a lot easier to replace your wireless infrastructure, a heck of a lot easier. Then it actually speeds up quite a bit. The thing is, what I want to point out here, there's a few things I want to point out, is that Moore's Law actually seems to be, like a lot of graphs you'll see, if you Google it, you'll see a lot of people putting a straight line to Moore's Law and saying it's a straight 60% forever. But in reality, we see that each of these processors has some quirks. And some of them are ahead of Moore's Law, some of them are behind Moore's Law. Even though they're still increasing the trend, they're a tiny bit off trend, usually. But you can still draw that trend line. But some people want to look at these graphs and they draw a curve instead, a logarithmic sort of curve or an exponential one, with Moore's Law especially. I don't think there's enough data to do that with the bandwidth. But if processing continuously outpaces the bandwidth, so every year that separation becomes bigger and bigger. That separation, even though the bandwidth is getting better and the processing is getting better, that separation, whether it's linear or logarithmic, or exponential, I should say, it's increasing all the time, either way. Okay, so that will make a lot of console supporting people happy, that idea. Now there's something else though, is our own ability to enjoy visuals. Like once you hit reality, now 4K is pretty damn close to reality. You have to have a pretty big damn screen before you're going to start wishing you had an 8K. Like if it's going to be your entire wall, then maybe you'd want an 8K screen. So you got to think that, okay, these things are increasing. They're increasing. But maybe at some point we're not going to care as gamers. Like who cares? Right? So you get games like Sea of Thieves and stuff who don't need, once you get to 4K, I mean, you could stream the whole game, and not install any of the game. As long as you can send your input, when you move your joystick or whatever it ends up being, when you press the trigger, it goes to the server as fast as it would going right to your Xbox. That's kind of the limit. If it goes faster than that, it kind of doesn't matter if the hardware is any better. Like once it goes faster than you can think, faster than you can perceive, once things look better than you can differentiate, when you don't know if you're looking out of a window or looking out of a screen, then it kind of makes sense. As far as graphical processing, why would you need any more than that? That's kind of the limit. That's your hard limit. If it if it can fool you 100% of the time, then why do you need ever more pixels? So we got almost 8 million pixels with your 4K. So maybe with 8K you get 16 million, but let's go crazy. Like, what if you had a billion pixels, right? Like, can you see that? Like, why, if you had a billion pixels, this is just conjecture, okay? We're just thinking about it. If you had a billion pixels, why would you need 2 billion? You could kind of stop there as to what's acceptable and move on and put that research money into other stuff. Okay, so on the one hand, hardware will continue to outpace the bandwidth, but on another side, once it's nearly instantaneous, where you can't tell, where there's no lag, right? Then it doesn't matter. Then it will move towards what's cheaper, right? And the cheapest thing is to not have an Xbox or a piece of plastic or a piece of hardware in your home, but have the hardware at Redmond or wherever the server farm is going to be, and let them take care of it. Let them continuously upgrade it. Let them mind it, right? So it does look like it's going to be the future, even like at some point, and some very smart people have said it's going to be over in 10 years. I don't think so. I think more 2025. That's when we're looking at the end, when we hit the wall of like, okay, you have a perfect display. Like, you don't need windows. Just put up screens in in every room of your house. Maybe, people start living underground. Who knows what? I mean, that would be more efficient. But that's where we are. So it looks like that is the future. That is correct. That we're not going to need, as long as bandwidth keeps increasing, we're not going to need hardware in the end, because it won't matter. The thing is, that's 25 years in the future, and you know what? A lot can happen in 25 years. So all of these predictions, all of these trends, they can be wiped out by who knows what. Who knows what? We don't know. All right. Quantum computing, if we had like a micro quantum computer, it might actually be cheaper to have a giant server farm sitting on your desk, right? We don't know what the future holds, but the way it looks like at some point the bandwidth is going to overtake the processor over here. They're going to mind all those things at big data centers. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. We've seen what's happening with YouTube and all these and Google and stuff. How centralization means a centralization of power. So if someone wants to turn off Sea of Thieves, let's say the SJWs of the future, they don't like Sea of Thieves because pirates and for some reason they just think pirates is it makes you Hitler. People were tweeting that today. Sea of Hitler. What the fuck? Right? So it's not outside of the bounds of reality that some kooks will get enough power to shut down Sea of Thieves, and there's nothing you can do about it. Right? And that's the way it is right now. So that is concerning. That is a danger. So that's I just wanted to share that with you, and I hope you've been enjoying. This is some Elite Dangerous that I've captured just recently. Man, it looks good in 4K. Holy smokes. How beautiful is that? It's so realistic, man. This game, if I just don't have time to appreciate this game. It's so in-depth. Like, you've got a life to live in the game. Like, that's how in-depth it is. It's just pretty amazing. I hope you've been enjoying the views. I flew out to this habitable planet with some rings, and I thought it would be nice to just skim along the rings and take some beautiful 4K video for you. So that's all I've got to say about that. I don't know, what do you think? Do you think we're going to go to consoles? Are we going to hit the wall anytime soon so that it's perfect? I know they're going to start offloading a lot of this stuff into the cloud, and why not, right? So discs are a thing of the past. Maybe even the Xbox itself will become a thing of the past. I don't think the Nielsen's Law is going to become exponential, but the wireless one might. So it might a lot of interesting things happening in the future. So thanks for tuning in. You've been hanging out with Dr. Diabolic. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button at the bottom of your screen if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe is at the top of the screen on BitChute, and make sure you never miss another show. Dr. Diabolic out.